What's up everybody, I am Steven from UltraTrailSteven. Today we're taking a look at the COROS Pace 2 versus the COROS Apex watches. Hopefully answer some questions on which watch might be best for you. List some of the features and figure out if you need this watch or maybe one of these watches. So let's take a look. So firstly, let me go ahead and say that I did purchase both of these Apex watches. This is the 42mm. We got the 46mm right here. I purchased both of these with my own money. COROS did send me this watch to review over here. This is the Pace 2. But again, I'm not required to say anything. They're not paying me. They're not going to see this video ahead of time. So I'm going to say what I want, and I will. And down below in the description, you will find affiliate links to go purchase these watches if you like. They don't cost you anything, but it does help support the channel. I have reviewed all of these watches in depth on my channel. You can take a look at those videos. I'll put links throughout the video, top right corner, or at the end of the video, you can see the full in-depth review of the Pace 2 or the Apex. So all three of the watches come with the silicone bands. You can also get the nylon band if you prefer. It does help reduce weight, and it just, you can get a little bit tighter maybe. So it's an option for all three of these watches. They're all quick release features. On the back, super easy to get off, so you can just replace the bands with something you find on Amazon, or when you buy that nylon band, if you want directly from COROS, you can replace it easily. By the way, if you're finding this video interesting, you're learning, maybe which watch you want to choose, why don't you go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, give the video a like. That really does help out a lot and lets YouTube know to recommend it to other people. That'd be really cool. And maybe click subscribe if you haven't already. That way you won't miss future videos like this as well. The Apex 46mm watch has a 22mm size band, whereas the Apex 42mm and the Pace 2 have a 20mm band. So they are the same size bands. This one is just a little bit different. As far as the size of the watches go, they are very similar. The Apex 46mm is obviously 46mm, whereas the Apex 42 and the Pace are both 42. So the Pace 2 and the Apex 42mm are almost identical in size, so you really won't notice a difference as far as the bulk on your wrist. And here we can take a look at what the Apex 42 and the Apex 46 look like on my wrist. As you can see, they both look fine. And the Pace 2 on the wrist now, just a little bit smaller than the Apex 46, but again, about that same size as the 42. The Apex 46mm weighs in with the silicone band at 55 grams, and then with the nylon band, it's 45 grams. The Apex 42mm watch comes in at 49 grams with this silicone band here. With the nylon band, it's 38 grams. And the Pace 2 comes in at 36 grams with the silicone band here. Super, super lightweight. You can even make that even lighter if you upgrade to the nylon band. With the nylon band, this comes in at around 29 to 30 grams. It's just super lightweight. One of the lightest watches on the market for sure. All three of the watches can pair via Bluetooth. They can connect sensors via Bluetooth or ANT+ technology, so you can get those heart rate sensors, COROS pod, all of that to connect very simply. Both of the Apex watches, so the 46mm and the 42, are water resistant down to 100 meters, whereas the Pace 2 is only water resistant down to 50 meters, but they will work just fine swimming in open water or a pool. One other difference in the Pace 2 is it actually has a lower working temperature versus the Apex watches. So the Pace 2 can actually work down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Whereas the Apex watches is only rated down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're going to be in an extremely cold environment running, then maybe the Pace 2 might be a little better. But with that said, all three of these watches here, the Pace 2 and the Apex series, are good up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, so you can go ahead and run inside your oven if you want to. Just kidding. Don't do that. All three of these watches here charge in less than 2 hours. We'll get into the battery life specifics here in just a moment, but they all have the same charging time. All three of the watches, the Pace 2 and the Apex series here, come with an altimeter, barometer, and compass. The ABCs of watches, they all have the gyroscope as well. They all feature the optical heart rate sensors and 24/7 heart rate monitoring should you choose. And they all are compatible with COROS Evo Lab now, so you can get those awesome new metrics and really dive deep into your data if that's what you want to do. All three of the watches, the Pace 2 and the Apex series, are going to have sleep monitoring, swimming heart rate. So if you're swimming, it actually gives you a heart rate, which is pretty rare but pretty cool. They all have third-party integration, so you can sync to Strava, Training Peaks, those kind of things there. They also all feature running power dynamically into the watches, so you don't need that extra stride pod or a COROS pod. They all feature running power, which is pretty cool with these watches, especially at their price points. It's kind of a rare thing to find, and it works really well. Okay, so let's get into some more specifics about each of the watches here now. We've got the COROS Apex 46 has a 1.2-inch display. The COROS Apex 42 has a 1.1-inch display. And then oddly, being that the Pace 2 and the Apex 42 are the same size as far as 42 millimeters, the display on the Pace 2 is actually 1.2 inches, just like the Apex 46. So it is larger than the Apex 42. And the resolution of the Pace 2 and the Apex 46 are the same at 240 by 240, whereas the Apex 42 millimeter is 218 by 218. All three of the watches feature an always-on memory LCD display. It's pretty easy to see in lighting. You can see here, you know, the backlights are pretty bright and you can see them pretty well. One thing I should note about the Pace 2 also is with this display, it does have something called night mode. So you can actually, it has the backlight stays on very dimly, so while you're running you can still see it. You can still see it pretty well. It's not available on the Apex series watch until you get to the Apex Pro. One of the biggest differences between the Apex series watches versus the Pace 2 watch is the actual glass. So the Apex 42 and the 46 come with the sapphire glass, which is just amazing. I mean, I've had the Apex 46 now for well over 3,000 miles, close to 2 years, and it's just not a single scratch on it. This sapphire glass is amazing. The Pace 2, on the other hand, comes with Corning glass, so it's going to give it some of that lighter weight because it doesn't weigh as much as the sapphire, but it's also not going to be as durable. So this might get scratched occasionally, so you may want to throw on a screen protector for that one possibly. So another difference between all three of the watches is the bezel material. So the Apex 46 millimeter has a grade 5 titanium alloy, which is great. It's got a couple of nicks on mine, but nothing crazy. My wife's watch, which is the Apex 42, has a stainless steel bezel. Also, you know, fairly good and pretty durable as well. But the bezel on the Pace 2 is just a fiber reinforced polymer. It's plastic. The whole watch is essentially plastic. It's where they get a lot of that weight savings, but it's just not quite as durable as the other two watches. If we flip the watches over, we'll see that the Apex 42 and the 46 both have an aluminum back, which is again a little bit more durable than the Pace 2, which is that same plastic fiber reinforced polymer. Okay, and now let's talk about another big difference in these watches, and that's going to be battery life. It's not that big, I guess I should say, but the Apex 46 millimeter has 35 hours of battery life for a normal standard GPS activity. So you're going for a trail run, doing an ultra marathon, you got 35 hours full GPS. You can then change that in Ultra Max mode up to 100 hours. So if you have a long event, you can use that. And the daily usage in just regular smartwatch mode is 30 days. So really good battery life. The Apex 42 millimeter is also really good, just not quite as good. So we have a 25-hour battery life for standard GPS usage, so any activity, you know, 25 hours. The Ultra Max mode, you can get up to 80 hours of use on that. And then for the daily smartwatch usage, they rated it as up to 24 days. So again, pretty darn good. Now what's interesting with the Pace 2 is the battery life on a GPS activity is actually better than the Apex 42. You get 30 hours on the Pace 2. So 5 more hours than the 42 millimeter and 5 hours less than the Apex 46 millimeter. Ultra Max mode again on Pace 2 is up to 60 hours. So again, you can still go really long. And the daily usage is rated up to 20 days. So bottom line, all three of these watches have phenomenal batteries. If you need to go really, really long, you're going to want the Apex 46. If you don't need to go as long, then, you know, make your choice. They're all going to get you really, really long. And now probably the biggest difference between these watches here. Both of the Apex series watches, the 42 and the 46, have breadcrumb trail navigation. So you can load a GPX file to your watch. You can follow it to, you know, either follow a race course if you're doing an ultra marathon, like a 100 miler, and you want to follow along, or you want to go do a long self-supported training run. You can follow that route, not get lost. It's back to start features, really nice. It works really, really well. With the Pace 2, however, there's no navigation at all. So not even a back to start feature. You cannot load a GPX file to the Pace 2. You cannot follow a course. So if that's a big deal to you, you might not want this watch. So know that going in, that this does not have any form of navigation whatsoever. And all three of the watches, for activities that they have on board, they've got some similarities for sure, but there are some differences. So take a look on the screen, there's a list. So all three of the watches have run, indoor run, track run, bike, indoor bike, open water swim, pool swim, flat water, rowing, GPS cardio, which is kind of a catch-all, gym cardio, triathlon mode, indoor row, and strength, as well as your structured training plans, which you can like build a structured workout I've got a separate video about that. You can take a look at that, top right corner. And like I said, that triathlon multi-sport mode. Now there are some activities you can get on the Apex series watches that you cannot get on the Pace 2. Namely, there is no trail run mode on the Pace 2. So you can do that on the Apex, not on the Pace 2. There's also no hiking, no walking at all. So if you're a hiker or a walker and you want to log that activity, you really kind of just have to use the GPS cardio activity. And then the Apex series does have some snow sports like, skiing, snow, that type of stuff as well. So if you're into those type of winter sports, you're going to want to look to one of these or better probably. All right, well that about sums it up between the differences between the Apex series watches and the Pace 2. Next we got to talk about price because that's a big factor. So the Pace 2 comes in at $199, which is a great price. The Apex 42mm comes in at $299, and then the Apex 46mm comes in at $349. So we've got a range of $200 to $350. Depends on what you need. If you are someone that wants to be able to load a GPX file, go follow that on a trail, then you're going to want to look to one of these Apex series watches. If that's not important to you and you are primarily or solely a road runner, then the Pace 2 at $199 is a great deal. It's your choice. Pick which watch works for you. Let me know below if you've tried one or all of these watches, which one works for you. Down in the comments, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Now, are you curious if you should upgrade from the Apex to the Apex Pro? I've got a video for that. Take a look here on the screen. You can go click on it, watch that video, and see if you might want to choose the Apex Pro over the Apex. Or over here on this side of your screen is a playlist of other COROS videos. Take a look at one of those. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you all very, very much. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Pew, pew.